So in the last video, we set up our MongoDB Atlas database. So that's ready to use. But what we're going to use to connect to that through our application is a tool called Mongoose, which is an object data mapper, or ODM. And it's a package we can easily install with npm, and we can connect to our database using mongoose.connect. And then what we do is we create a model for all of our resources. Now this particular application is very simple. The only resource we have is ideas, right? But if we had, let's say, an e-commerce website or application, we would have like products, categories, users, things like that. So you'd create a separate model for each one. Generally, you're going to create a model for each collection that you have. Now, Mongoose has just a bunch of really easy methods for querying. So like right here, find by ID and delete, find one and delete. So there's all these different methods that we can use. And what we've been doing is just working with hard-coded data. So we've just been using vanilla JavaScript, which actually makes it harder. But with Mongoose, we can just like delete one and pass in the ID or whatever. So this is the docs if you want to take a look. Shows you how to create models and all that, but I wanted to show you that. And then there's also another package we're going to use called .env, because at the end of the last video, I had you paste in your database string into a .env file. Well, it's period env. Now this will allow us to use that .env file. Okay, so without this, then it's not much help. But if we just install this .env package and we require it, we can then access our variables with process.env and then whatever, Mongo URI or whatever we want. So those are the two packages we're going to install and work with in this video. So let's jump into VS Code. I'm just going to stop the server for a minute, and we're going to npm install, let's say, .env and Mongoose. Okay, and those should get added to your package.json. Good. Now, we have already in our .env, we have the Mongo URI. Well, you should if you've been following along. I also want to put my port in here of for my local host, which is something that I always do. So I just figured we'd do it here, and I'm going to use 5,000. All right, actually, for temporarily, I'm going to make it 8,000 just so we can make sure that it's actually coming from this port or this variable. So in server.js, in order to use .env, we just have to require it. So let's go right under here where we brought in express, and let's say require. Okay, we don't have to actually set it to a variable. We just need to require it. So .env. And then we need to call the config method. So right here, we just simply do .config and parentheses. Now for the port, instead of setting it directly to 5,000, I'm going to set it to process.env.port. Now, if it can't find this .env value, then I'm going to say then connect on 5,000. So right now, since I have this set to 8,000, if I run my server and it's able to find this, then it should run on 8,000. So let's go ahead and run npm run dev, and you'll see server listening on 8,000. All right, now I'm going to stop that because I do want to change that back to 5,000. I just wanted to test it out. And by the way, whenever you either add, remove, or update any variables from here, you do have to restart your server, even if you're using NodeMon. All right, so let's go ahead and start it back up. And just make sure that for your Mongo URI, you have your password, and then you have your name of your database. Otherwise, when we connect, you're going to get an error. Now, to connect, there's a lot of different ways you can do this or structure this. I usually create a separate file called config or database. So what I'm going to do is create a folder called config, just for any configuration for this API or this app. And I'm going to create a file called db.js. So that's where I actually want to use Mongoose to connect to my database. So from here, we're going to bring in Mongoose. So let's say require Mongoose. And then we want to call Mongoose Connect, which is, it returns a promise. So I'm going to use a sync await here. I'm going to create a function called connect db, and I'm just using an arrow function. So we need to make this asynchronous. So right here, we're going to say async. Okay, and then in our connect db, let's create a variable called con for connection, and we're going to await, because remember mongoose.connect, it returns a promise. So mongoose connect, then in here we pass in our Mongo URI, which we can access with process.env.mongo_URI, or whatever you called it. Let me just make sure that's what I called it. Yeah. So we're going to do that. And let's see, we'll just do a console log just to, let us know that we connected. So let's say console log, and I'm going to put some backticks in here and say MongoDB connected, and we can get the host name. So I'm going to put that in here as well. Say MongoDB connected, then colon, and then in here we can say conn dot connection dot host. Okay, and then we need to also export this. So let's say module.exports, and we're going to set that to connect db. Okay, so we're just exporting this function as default. So let's save this. Now we just need to go into our server.js, and we need to bring in connect db. So let's do that right here. Let's say const connect db. We're going to get that from require, and that's going to be in ./config/db. Then we need to just simply call the function. So let's go right here and say connect db. Okay, so I saved it and we are connected, but I get this warning right here. It's not an error, it's just a warning, and it says the strict query option will be switched back to false. So basically, to suppress this warning, we just go into our DB, and we're just going to set an option here. So we can say mongoose dot set, and then let's pass in here strict, this right here, strict query, and set that to true, and that should suppress that warning. So now I'm going to just restart my server, npm run dev, and we get server listening on 5000, and then directly after that we see MongoDB connected, and we see the host name. Now, if you don't see that and you see some kind of error, make sure you read the error, because it's one thing I notice with a lot of beginners is they'll contact me and they'll paste in, the entire error, and it's literally right there that they can't authenticate or whatever the reason is. So make sure you read that. Chances are that you missed either your password, or you misspelled your username, or your database is wrong, or you forgot to put your IP address in, because right now in your local environment, only your IP address can connect to this, because that's how we set it up in Atlas. All right, so now that we're connected, we can close that file. We're not going to need that anymore. And in the next video, we're going to create a model and a schema for our ideas.